I have always thought that money in politics is a problem. I've always been a strong supporter of the American Civil Liberties Union, and we have always agreed on issues for the most part. But today, interestingly, no matter how many times you find yourself on the same page as somebody, if you look hard enough, you'll find yourself with some disagreement. A respectful and civil conversation is about to follow today, folks, between myself and Ben Stone of the American Civil Liberties Union of Iowa regarding money in politics and campaign finance reform. Stay tuned.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
I'm a burrito.
I'm a fighting burrito, full of fresh ingredients prepared before your very eyes.
I don't have eyes.
I have over 28 options and 268 million combinations, including Rizo for vegetarians.
I can take my meat off and call myself vegetarian.
Put that back on. The Fighting Burrito is locally owned.
I'm owned by some big corporation somewhere. Say, you want to go on a date?
No thanks. I'm seeing a quesadilla.
The Fighting Burrito online, fightingburrito.com. Join the fight.
This is Dr. Holding of the Story County Veterinary Clinic. For 15 years, we have been spaying and neutering feral cat groups at affordable prices. Wild cats destroy game birds and songbirds. A single female cat can produce over 4,000 kittens in 7 years. The shelters are full, so unwanted kittens will be put to sleep. Your cats will stay home and stay healthy. Call us for all your dog and cat needs at the Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30, 1 mile east of Interstate 35, 515-232-8766.
Local farms, global flavor. That's the secret to Hawk's growing popularity. The best meals begin with the best ingredients, and 90% of Hawk's ingredients come from local farms. In addition to seasonal fruits and vegetables, Hawk features grass-fed beef and lamb, and pasture-raised chicken and duck, all raised without hormones, steroids, or cages. The coffee is fair trade, locally roasted, and Hawk's House liquors come from right here in Iowa. Hawk's owners go the extra mile, composting organic waste and recycling. For more information or to make reservations, visit hawktable.com. That's HOQ table.com.
With warm weather finally here, it's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
Last year, the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit attracted over 460 people from 43 countries. This year's summit is November 9th at Drake University. Every year, more than 100 companies are formed by summit attendees. This year, 15 seminars will be taught answering questions like, what do you do when the IRS audits your business? Register now for this year's Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit online at iesusa.org. That's iesusa.org.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
There I am, towering over the world behind me. What an interesting graphic. Huh? Maybe we should change that sometime, just to spruce it up a little bit. Go with something maybe more spring-like. Maybe some flowering crabapple trees or lilacs. Maddie's shaking her head. Just shut up, Ed, and do the talk show. She really doesn't want to hear me going on about this. I want to tell you, folks, Brother Trucker, heck of a group. They're starting their Wednesday deals at El Bait Shop again. You should check that out. They're a fantastic group. Andy Fleming has been wonderful to share his music with this program from day one. When we started the show back in 2009, Andy Fleming's Downtown was our leadoff tune, and it still is. I love the tune, and I love the meaning behind it. I also want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club and Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility for sponsoring the Fallon Forum, and Gateway Market and Cafe for providing some support for this segment of our show. Later in the program, that meddlesome Heather Ryan is going to join us. I had thought that Dr. Goldman would be here, and he had thought so as well. But higher duty calls him in the operating room. Unfortunately for both him, for us, and for his patient, he's not able to be here today, which leaves me in the very unfortunate position of having to defend my position on campaign finance reform against Ben Stone of the American Civil Liberties Union. What I have going for me, though, which is fortunate, is that I'm right and he's wrong. We're just going to start it out with that, Ben, right there, just throwing down the gauntlet. Campaign finance reform. How in the world can you be against that?
Well, first of all, I get the feeling I'm on Weekend Update on SNL with your background there.
You like that?
So I guess we're going to be telling jokes here. No, actually, Ed, I think by the time we're done, you're going to be agreeing with me. I'm very confident. Okay. You're a reasonable person.
Bring it on. Yeah, bring it on, Ben. Bring it on.
There's actually, the whole issue of campaign finance reform, boy, it has been a just incredibly divisive issue within the ACLU National Board for 30 or 40 years.
I'm glad to hear that.
Really, actually, the National Board was in the midst of examining everything about this right as Citizens United came down, and the timing of the revision of our policy was just coincidental. Although I'm sure a lot of people knew that Citizens United was in the pipeline and was going to be coming down.
Maybe that's.
And we also knew that it was probably going to be pretty bad. But
yeah.
What the ACLU did in 2010 was. It used to be that we supported public financing of campaigns, but we wouldn't tolerate strings being attached, which made it
such as what kind of strings are we talking about?
There couldn't be limits on your ability to raise money privately if you got public financing.
Then what's the incentive to go with a public option?
It was a political non-starter.
So does the ACLU oppose the restrictions that are placed on congressional candidates and on the presidential election?
Well, let me say this, that the ACLU supports public financing and disclosure. Those are the two main things that we're big believers in. And what we no longer oppose are public financing mechanisms that place some reasonable restrictions on the ability of the candidate to go out and raise private money. As long as we determine that the public financing mechanism is truly voluntary, that it's not so coercive that it forces people to become candidates for the public campaign financing. So basically what it means is that, for instance, this year, the Voice Act that was introduced this March, we were actually undecided on it. It didn't go very far.
And Voice is voter-owned Iowa Clean Elections. It's a bill. I think Chuck Eisenhardt in the House, Pam Yoakum, and Jeff Daniels in the Senate, I believe, have introduced it. It's a bill that would set up a system much like has been in play in Arizona, where else? Connecticut, Vermont. I think Vermont.
Yeah, and I think Maine had something. But
yeah.
Some of those have been stricken.
Maine and Arizona were the two leading states. Yeah. Yes, you're right.
And they've both, of course, been stricken with some restrictions by the courts.
Well, they've been amended by the courts.
Yeah.
They're still in effect. Yeah. And most candidates have embraced those options.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the thing is that, what baffles me, Ed, is that, I became a personal believer in public financing, back in the 1980s when I was in college and, Common Cause. And I'm just thinking, well, this is just so obviously a good idea. Why can't we get it done? And, here we are 30 years later, and it's still hard. What I think
it's actually worse now than it was 30 years ago. It's much worse.
But it's also, with the issue of public financing, has still not gotten any much political traction. And I think what's missing is that, if I were trying to promote public financing, and I do, but I just don't do it, on the airways very much, look at it as an investment. If you want to lower your taxes, you should support public financing of campaigns, because the amount of money that the average taxpayer has to kick into the system to make up for the billions of dollars of tax breaks that big corporations are getting because they contribute to campaigns and they're essential to the reelection of these federal and state people, for that matter. People should really look at it. This is you want to invest in a smaller, leaner, smarter, more compassionate government. You should be supporting public finance.
Yeah, you can give a pittance in campaign donations compared to what you get back in preferential treatment from state and federal policies.
There was a thing that talked about the Koch brothers that for their $100 million or $200 million they were going to kick in, they would probably get that back tenfold.
Sure. Yeah, Mid-American Energy, drops $50,000 on an inauguration.
Yeah.
And yet gets how much was it, $25 million or $15 million maybe to study the nuclear power issue. They would have gotten a huge subsidy from increased rates from the 600,000 people in their service area had the legislature approved the nuclear power plant proposal they wanted. So yeah, that's a tremendous return on investment. But now this troubles me, Ben. We're agreeing. So I thought we were supposed to be disagreeing on this.
Well, I can. Here's the position of the ACLU. First of all, I have my own personal beliefs, but I'm not really here. I mean, I might mention them, but that's not my focus. My focus is to talk about the ACLU. The ACLU does believe that when you go out as an individual or a collection of individuals, corporations, to spend money to advocate for a cause, for an issue, that is core political speech. Now, one can certainly have different views about whether or not, the right to go out and spend $100 million should be the same as the right to go out and spend $100. Should those be treated equally? In other words, you can't have any limits. I think there's good debate that's viable on that.
The whole premise is money is an element of free speech.
Yeah, but when I read about Buckley v. Vallejo, the 1970s case,
right,
when I was in law school.
And that was a case that basically said you can't restrict how much money a candidate can spend, correct?
Yeah. And that was kind of the first time where the court kind of said that, spending money on speech is the same as speech.
And so the approach to trying to regulate campaign finance, what came in on the revenue side, what I want to say, candidates weren't allowed to. They weren't restricted in what they could spend, but they were restricted in terms of what they could bring in from certain sources. $5,000 cap for a PAC, for example, $2,300 cap for an individual, that sort of thing.
And the ACLU continues to support and has long supported limits on contributions to candidates. I mean, there's really little question that when a candidate goes out and asks somebody to give a huge donation to their campaign, it's reasonable in a democracy to restrict how much that can be. Because, but it's the way that we've got these 501c4s and the super PACs.
Well, a 501c4 is strictly legislative. That's strictly issue oriented.
Well,
they can't do any hardcore electioneering.
One thing that's happened with this whole IRS situation, the so-called scandal, and it is wrong. I mean, get me.
Well, I think everybody agrees with that.
But what appears to have happened is that the people in Cincinnati working for the IRS were just first of all, they've cut their staffing massively since the Republicans took over, so they've got very little staff, and they were taking shortcuts that were also ignorant. It's fine. You've got 7,000 people applying for 501c4s. You got to come out. You kind of come
70,000.
up with a way. Is it 70,000?
70,000 per year. Yeah. Right. I think that's what it was, and there was an increase after Citizens United.
After Citizens United, because here was this.
Yeah.
It kind of opened up the floodgates, and frankly, the ACLU does support the idea that there are serious issues. One thing that I think everybody's kind of learned is paying attention to this is that back in 1959, when they wrote the IRS code that deals with 501c4 nonprofit, non-political organizations, was that it said that if you are exclusively non-political, then you get a 501c4 exemption. Well, the IRS adopted a rule. There's laws, and then the rules are passed by the agencies. Right. The agency passed a rule that didn't say exclusively, said primarily. Oh. And actually, the United States Code says that a 501c4 cannot engage in political activity.
Right.
But the IRS code, the IRS rules, says that it cannot be the primary thing. So there's all these things. Now, the ACLU, it doesn't matter what the code says. We refuse to get involved in politics because we defend everybody's rights, and we've been doing that for 90 years, and we will not stop doing that no matter what happens.
Right.
But there are certainly plenty of groups that get out there and they say, hey, we got a 501c4 exemption. Let's start playing loosey-goosey with the idea of what's political and what isn't, and they start,
and there are 501c3s that do that as well. I mean, churches come to mind. There have been some right-wing churches hard right churches that have basically electioneered from the pulpit. They seem to be getting away with it.
And I've said publicly in some of my columns that we need to have either get rid of the rule or enforce it, because when you give a 501c3 like a religious organization an exemption from taxes and say, okay, but in condition of getting that tax preference treatment, you can't get involved in helping people get elected. When people start doing that, the people that are 501c3s like the ACLU Foundation of Iowa, we don't get involved in politics, and other organizations don't get involved in politics. Well, it makes an uneven playing field.
Sure.
And it's not fair.
And they've
either
often got away with
enforce it or get rid of it and let everybody speak.
Yeah.
which is actually what the ACLU would.
And see, I would agree with you on that. I would agree with that entirely. But again, we have this regulation, and
my chair is sinking on me.
Well, you have the amazing sinking.
I think
Maddie,
I'm being
why
hazed.
did you give him the amazing sinking chair?
I think I'm being hazed by you guys.
Picking on our guest. I was supposed to be the one picking on him, not my producer. No, so given the fact that we have this rule that 501c3s can do nothing of a political or legislative nature, 501c4s have to be focused on legislative stuff, not electoral stuff. I can understand why workers in Cincinnati with the IRS would want to red flag a group with the name Tea Party in it. I mean, the Tea Party is overtly political. There's very little, 501c3-ish educational about it. It's got an agenda. It's got an axe to grind, and they are very active in politics. I mean, you think of Tea Party, you think of political party, you think of a wing of the Republican Party. So, again, regardless of how you feel about whether the rules should exist, they exist. And the fact that they do exist, it doesn't bother me that IRS workers were flagging Tea Party groups. I think they probably were right to do so.
Well, I think the problem is that does create a lack of equal treatment. And that's just absolutely, there's a way to deal with an onslaught of applications, and you need to scrutinize them, because there are likely a lot of applications that really deserve a great deal of scrutiny.
Right. Well,
no question about that. It's just when you label, when you use a label that has a strong political connections with your scrutiny, that's the problem. And they should have said, look, anything that's coming in that's brand new needs to be flagged. That's fine. But you just can't tie the flag to a political, ideological position. Believe me, the ACLU has been scrutinized by the IRS for many, many years. We're very sensitive to this. Yeah. In fact, I just found out that one of my affiliate colleagues is being audited by the IRS on his 501c4, which is interesting.
Okay.
It's not the Iowa affiliate; it's another affiliate. But so I think that there's no question the IRS. They were clumsy. They didn't know what. They don't seem to be well trained, and they didn't do this right.
Well, but again, why would you not see, knowing what the Tea Party is about, seeing all over the news, seeing how political it is? I mean, every day you hear people say the Tea Party is going to find a candidate. The Tea Party, this regarding an election, this regarding an election. It's all overt. I mean, very, very clearly political. So why would that not cause a diligent, fair-minded IRS worker to have some concerns about that? And more to the point, too, since you have these churches that are, again, electioneering from the pulpit, churches have that tax status as well. They're not allowed to be overtly political.
Right.
And they're doing it. And why would that not raise red flags with the IRS as well?
Well, it should. And you know what, Ed, now with all this controversy, the chances of the IRS actually stepping up. Part of the trouble is I actually spoke with our general counsel in Washington about this a couple of years ago. Said that, look, the IRS has never given clear guidance to people. They made a mechanism for people to make complaints. You can actually, as an individual, you can complain about a religious person in a religious organization making an overtly political statement, from the pulpit or from the official, church or synagogue or whatever. But they didn't give guidance on how to determine whether or not that's impermissible political activity. And so the IRS they're scared to try to enforce it. They've only done it a few times. And it's a real problem. And now with this controversy, the IRS is going to be even more timid. I mean, you might as well just get rid of that rule and let everybody who wants to. Now, the ACLU, the ACLU will never get involved in politics. It's just not what we're going to do. But any other 501c4, if they wanted to, hey, if the group over here is breaking the rules and getting involved in politics to get their people elected, and the other people are obeying the law because they respect the rule of law,
That's not
they're
fair.
at a
I
disadvantage,
agree.
and
That's
it's
not fair.
we want the marketplace of ideas to be vigorous and even.
I love that, the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah,
That's a great capitalist way to frame the First Amendment.
Well, and I think that's how Justice Brandeis and others on the court, 100 years ago, decided to bring it out. And frankly, if you look at the ACLU's position, that basically the expenditure of money in the advocacy of an issue or speech actually is a reflection of speech. That's an implicit endorsement of the fact that in America, private property is real and it's recognized. And if you have more money than somebody else, that's just acceptable in a capitalist system. So I think the ACLU's position is consistent with that perspective.
Yeah, we got to run to a break, Ben. But I want to get back to this conversation when we return. I want to get your take specifically too on some of the legislative activity on this issue here at the Iowa level, and also kind of your position on Citizens United, where it's likely to go, the super PACs. I mean, the impact this has had on elections and on policy. But I also want to make sure that we're clear on the difference, too, because I hear us talking a lot more about similarities and differences, and that's encouraging. And if you want to join the conversation, folks, it's 244-0077, or toll free, it's 855-244-0077. And you can email me at fallonforum@gmail.com. And again, we do seem to have some trouble with the Fallon Forum website today, so if you are listening to the show on one of the other many options, please direct your friends to those as well, one of them being webcast1live.com. I want to thank Gateway Market and Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. Had a wonderful late afternoon meeting at Gateway Market last night, yesterday afternoon. I had a Thelma bar and a glass of wine. How cool is that? I don't know. Why not? It was it's a great place to meet, to eat, and to shop. Again, a lot of the food you'll buy in the grocery store is from local sources. So check them out, folks. That's Gateway Market and Cafe at 20th and Woodland. And also do not forget their fantastic catering service. I'll be back in a few minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day one of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. but actually it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going, man.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking with us here on the Fallon Forum. That's Mr. Baber's Neighbors. And I want to thank the Iowa Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit. Anytime I see I in front of an acronym, I assume it's Iowa. No, it's the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit. It's an annual event this year, November 9th at Drake University's Olmsted Hall. It's an event where anybody can come and learn, particularly immigrants, because they're the folks who may be less familiar with a lot of our laws and business practices. But you can get some great ideas from a panel of experts throughout the day on how to deal with the new Affordable Care Act changes, for example, how to deal with tax code changes as well. So, get ready for that. That's going to be the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit, November 9th. You can check it out for more information online. About almost 500 people showed up last year, and a lot of great new business ideas came out of the summit. So give it a look and think about attending yourself. Back to our conversation with Ben Stone. You're welcome to join us, folks, at 244-0077. We're talking campaign finance reform. And, I want to try to make sure I understand the crux of the difference. Mm-hmm. I'm of the belief that money is not free speech. Money is privilege. Mm-hmm. That because you may have privilege does not give you the intrinsic right to be able to have greater influence on government and policy. And I say that knowing that such is human nature, such is the nature of society, where, the rich tend to have more influence on things. And that's a lot of what my life has been about fighting. I think there should be more equality. And I think we probably agree on that. But to me, the best system would be one that would limit what you can bring in, what you can spend even if necessary, but certainly what you can bring. I think if you limit the revenue that candidates can accept, what I did as a legislator is I never took money from PACs. I never took any donation over a certain size. When I was a legislator, I capped it at $100, which is very small. Yeah. I even had people offer me $500, and I said no. And then I also, when I ran for a higher office, I capped it at $2,400, which was in the governor's race. My cap was $2,400. My opponents were getting checks of $50,000. So I felt really good about that, and I'd like to see some kind of a system like that in place for everybody. That's just that was my own decision, but I understand, the core challenges to this. I understand why certain groups wouldn't want to see it change, but to me, some kind of system like that is not a violation of free speech. It actually enhances free speech. It gives everybody a chance to be more evenly heard in the political debate.
Well, Ed, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the ACLU does not disagree. Where we disagree is, there's a distinction here. Giving money to campaigns. I give money to you to run for office, or you give money to the person over here to run for office. That's different than you or me spending money on our own on a cause. We might even like a candidate, but we're not coordinating. The ACLU is very supportive of efforts to get rid of this really fiction that there's no coordination between these super PACs.
Oh, gosh.
And the candidates. We all know that is just laughable.
Sure.
And that's something the ACLU is very strongly supportive
I saw that in my congressional campaign. It was really clear that Boswell and some of these super PACs that were coming out against me were coordinating their efforts. Yeah. But there was no way of proving that.
Yeah. And the real difficulty is when you've got restrictions on independent expenditures by private citizens, including unions and corporations, groups of individuals. When they're doing issue advocacy, that is fully protected free speech. I think everybody agrees with that. It's when you start saying, well, that's not really issue advocacy, that's political. You're trying to undermine a candidate. You're trying to get a candidate elected or another candidate not elected. When you start restricting that, that's where you start getting into this kind of murky area. And what the ACLU's concern is that because that's not easily defined, what you end up doing is and this is what was in the Disclose Act that was in the Congress last year, that the ACLU again opposed, because what they said was, hey, issue advocacy within January 1st to the election, that entire period, no group could air ads that would in any way be viewed as supportive, even if it was not express advocacy, if it was just implied advocacy, restricted. And that's just a limitation on free speech. I think one of the things that really divides people on the Citizens United ruling is that, corporations are not just for profit. There are nonprofit corporations. And, my personal belief is that there should be a way to draw distinctions, because a private corporation that is for profit is actually, people running a for-profit corporation will get in trouble legally if they spend money that isn't in the interest of the corporation.
Right.
I mean, that is their duty.
Right.
Whereas people
which is
run,
weird to me.
Yeah, which is,
I've always thought that was odd.
And people that run nonprofits, they can be altruistic. They can spend money that doesn't ultimately end up helping. And the ACLU proves that all the time. We defend the rights of people that are despised.
Fred Phelps, for example.
Yes.
The Klan.
Yeah, Phelps,
yeah,
the
there
Klan,
are many
Nazis.
people willing to come out there and defend the Klan. And
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And that may be one reason that I was one of the few legislators in the history of Iowa that ever had a 100% voting record with the ACLU.
Well,
not every year either.
And you and Johnny Hammond were the only two that voted against the sex offender residency law.
Yeah, which
we both got reelected too.
Well, although that was one of the issues that was used against me, multiple years later by Boswell.
Yeah, but it is a very because people collecting together to speak as one voice is obviously something that's been done since the beginning of our republic, and we just can't. The ACO can't sit by and watch while there's a potential for a well-meaning law to say, hey. You guys are a nonprofit corporation. You can't speak either. Yeah. So that's
the difference between America now and America 200 years ago is the concentration of wealth and the power that accrues to those who have that wealth to have undue influence
and the existence of corporations.
Yes,
which really didn't exist. I think there were 3 corporations that existed at the time of the founding.
And no political parties.
Yeah.
Those were the days, folks. No political parties. 3 corporations. Why can't we get back there, Ben?
Really.
Okay. So I want to ask you about voice, and then have maybe a broader conversation about Citizens United and where we go, because we're in deep Shinola. I mean, this is worse than it ever has been. I mean, I started fighting the campaign finance reform fight back in 1992. It's worse now by a long shot. Pam Yoakum, the president of the Senate, the Iowa Senate, was fighting this back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think she would probably agree it's worse now than it ever has been. So let me talk about that when Heather Ryan joins us in the final segment. But looking specifically at voice, this is the voter-owned Iowa Clean Elections Law based on Maine, based on Arizona, that again would be a voluntary system. And I suspect that's why the ACLU is okay with it. But don't let me put words in your mouth.
It's 30 pages. Well, the actual bill itself is, I think, 25 pages long.
That's reasonably short.
And it's mostly new law. I mean, it's mostly new code sections. So, the bill went to subcommittee and did not get past that level. We did not register opposed to it because depending upon the details and how the analysis would go, it may be something that we could either support or simply remain neutral on. The main concern is the disclosure of small donors, which I don't think is a problem in that bill, as I recall.
That's something. So the donors have to identify themselves?
Well, I'm just kind of getting back to kind of the core ACLU concerns with anything. The right of people to give donations that are not unduly influential. In other words, it's one thing to give a gift of $100,000. the right to make a gift either to a campaign or to a political group that's expressly advocating for one candidate, for that person to stay anonymous. If you're a smaller donor where there's really no credible argument that you're making a play to have undue influence, those people should be able to remain anonymous. But in the Voice Act, that's not really a part of it.
So what is the threshold? If you said 100,000, what about 50?
It all depends on how you just analyze it and make your best assessment. I mean, I don't know what it would be. I think that's what policymakers have tried to do in terms of establishing contribution limits. I think originally after the Nixon Watergate stuff, and it wasn't directly related to Watergate, it was the other scandal, but wasn't it $100,000 or something? I mean, at some point there has to be a determination. So my point is only this, that in any mechanism of enforcement of some type of public financing voluntary campaign, let's just make sure that smaller donors to non-political groups are going to be, the ACLU's membership is confidential. And we take that very seriously because the FBI infiltrated the ACLU in its first 70 years of existence. I mean, the FBI was attending all national board meetings. No, the whole time.
Oh, the whole time?
The
whole
gosh,
time.
Okay. The file on the
a long-standing
ACLU,
relationship.
Yeah, they were attending, they had a mole attending national board meetings up until the 1970s when the church committee started examining all this. So we're very sensitive to that. But to get back to the Voice Act itself, what's good about it is that it is potentially a truly voluntary system. It depends on the details, the numbers, because what we insist on to be consistent with free speech in our interpretation is that if you are telling a candidate, hey, here is an option, go with public financing, reasonable restrictions on your ability to raise money from private donors, that's okay. It used to be the ACLU said, hey, any public financing mechanism could not have any strings attached. In other words, you could do public financing, go out and raise as much money as you wanted.
So your organization has changed.
Yeah, that was in 2010.
And is that in response to the Citizens United ruling?
Well, coincidentally, it came out a few weeks later, but it was already in the system. In other words, there'd been a 3-year committee process. It moves slow. There's only 4 board meetings a year, so it moves slow. But no, that was actually in the pipeline and ready to go before the Citizens United ruling
that's what you're referring
came
to earlier,
down.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that we're not opposed to limits to contributions to candidates. It's that really murky area where you've got, and the other thing we support strongly is corporate reform. The idea that corporations can that corporate managers can secretly spend corporate money to push a candidate and the shareholders don't know.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, and that is something that the ACLU strongly supports changing in the regulations because that really does make for secret advocacy. And it's a democracy system within the corporation itself, and that would help create disclosure. Obviously,
now, a related issue of importance that's gaining national interest is the issue of corporate personhood. What does the ACLU stand on that?
The ACLU does not think that eliminating corporate personhood is a good idea. It's just too intertwined.
Agree with Mitt Romney? Corporations are people?
No, but for the purposes of legal analysis, they're sometimes treated as people. It's just that's the way it is. And it's been that way for years. When a corporation is raided by the government and they want to go in there and take all their files, they can bring a Fourth Amendment challenge. Not the individual owner or owners of the corporation. You don't get all the board of directors listed as the defendant or the plaintiff. It's the corporation. They do have the right to assert the Bill of Rights to protect their privacy interest.
And that makes sense on one level.
Corporate personhood, it's really a distraction, I think. What we need to recognize is that, for good or ill, the Supreme Court has recognized that, at least in many contexts, including now the First Amendment, corporations are to be treated as persons for the purposes of enforcing the Constitution in certain contexts. That doesn't mean that they're persons in the kind of normal sense. But I think to get too involved in that is just not a good idea. And I think
that would be a good debate to have.
The real essence of this, Ed, is that Citizens United is here, and most people, I think, of genuine sincere interest in democracy are very concerned about it. And it's how do you fix it? What is the solution? You're not going to amend the Constitution.
Well, let me bring Heather Ryan into that conversation. She's going to join us shortly. We have to take a short break here, folks. But Heather Ryan's with us. Ben Stone with the American Civil Liberties Union of Iowa. We're talking about money in politics, all sorts of angles. We've been talking about the voice legislation at the state level. One more quick question, Ben. Why a voice has been offered for 4 or 5 years in a row now, maybe more, and now we can't even get out of subcommittee. I tell you, we got to go to break, but I want to come back on that topic and then switch to Citizens United. I just want to get kind of closure on why campaign finance reform is stagnant at the Iowa legislature, despite years ago the legislature passed 3 different times solid campaign finance reform legislation. Why is it now going nowhere? We'll talk about that and the Citizens United issue. Heather Ryan will join us. We'll be back in just a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Last year, the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit attracted over 460 people from 43 countries. This year's summit is November 9th at Drake University. Every year, more than 100 companies are formed by summit attendees. This year, 15 seminars will be taught answering questions like, what do you do when the IRS audits your business? Register now for this year's Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit online at iesusa.org. That's iesusa.org.
Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines, and check out ritualcafe.com.
Wow, some wedding.
Yeah, I've never seen a bride in coveralls.
Right, and skipping down the aisle to accordion music.
Not to mention the reception. That wedding cake was a freaking fruit cake.
It's your wedding. Don't leave anything to chance. Diana's Wedding Cakes. Using only the finest, freshest ingredients with free on-time delivery and setup. Choose one of Diana's custom designs or create your own. Call Diana's Wedding Cakes, 641-275-9279. That's 641-275-9279.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm not the guy who cared about love.
That's Max Wellman. He's not the guy who cares about love, but sure cares about music. And actually, I think he probably cares about love as well. We're back to the conversation here on the Fallon Forum. I want to thank Hawk Restaurant and Tally's Restaurant for sponsoring this segment of our show. We're talking with Ben Stone. I was hoping it would get uglier, that we'd throw stuff at each other, that we'd be strongly disagreeing. But as we get into the nuances of the conversation about money and politics, we aren't that far apart. Heather Ryan joins us as well. Heather, welcome to the show.
I think that's why you invited me on, to see if we'd throw things, right? The east side, west side thing going on.
That's right. Well, I'm not sure this is an area we can disagree. And you ran for Congress.
I did run for Congress.
In Kentucky, of all places.
Yeah, so I didn't personally, as a Democrat in Kentucky, have to worry about corporations giving to me. So that wasn't my big concern.
Yeah, but you still raised, what, 35 grand, you said?
35 grand, right.
So did you place any restrictions on donations or?
We did full disclosure. So even our small dollar donors, we disclosed. So we really didn't have any restrictions. Our biggest donation was $5,000 from a PAC, a Democratic PAC. But, we were tickled to get it. We didn't have to worry about corporations being people and the rules that go around that.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't in effect at the time, but it wouldn't have mattered. They wouldn't have given me money.
And I don't know whether you've been tracking the campaign finance debates at the Iowa State House, but something for all the 14 years I was there, I was very involved with the debate, which again went nowhere. But back in the 80s, Mike Gronstal supported. I think there were 3 separate times that the Senate and House, under Democratic control, passed campaign finance reform legislation. It was vetoed by a governor from way back when named Branstad.
Who's that
so
again?
some things never changed, but what has changed is the Democrats no longer seem to have any passion for getting money out of politics. The voice legislation, as Ben pointed out, didn't even make it out of subcommittee in the Democratic Senate. What's going on?
Well, that's a question for our legislative director, Rita Bettis. I didn't ask her. She was at the subcommittee meeting where it didn't pass. You're right. It's a Democratic chamber. I don't know.
What do you think, Heather?
I haven't been following it either, so you're kind of here on your own.
I shall answer the question.
We have lost our passion as Democrats. We have lost our passion for campaign finance reform. I will agree with that, and that's because money owns politics, regardless of affiliation.
Exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not that Democrats no longer think that money in politics is a problem. They've learned how to play the game. They've learned how to play the game. They've gotten good. It used to be that Republicans would outspend Democrats by many factors. And the story was Republicans would win on money or Democrats would win on shoe leather. Now, there's still plenty of shoe leather out there, but money is just as important to Democrats as it is to Republicans. And I think that's why you no longer see Mike Gronstal, who voted for campaign finance reform several times in the past. He's now against any kind of campaign finance reform because he's learned how to play the game.
And then I think it's important to recognize that the people with the money have gotten strategically wise, and they've got so much money to give, they give to both.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They smother the system with money on both sides, and it just tamps down any enthusiasm.
Well, and there are constituency groups like Labor that only give to Democrats, or the gay and lesbian community, they only give to Democrats. There are constituency groups that almost only give to Republicans.
I think, though, that they give to those because the other side just doesn't give them anything to work with on their issue. I think that if someone from the opposite side gave them something to work with and said, okay, I've decided I'm pro-gay and lesbian rights, they'd give to Republicans, too.
Or Scott Walker got religion on Labor and suddenly hugged a Labor leader. Maybe he'd get some money as well.
I'd kind of give to him then because that's just worth money to see. That's the price of admission.
Just for the entertainment value. I know how much you like entertainment.
I do. It's all about, is it worth going to the movie? I'd pay for it.
Yeah. Scott Walker and Labor, the miniseries.
A true love story. Yeah, it's got the love story aspect.
Okay, speaking of love stories, none at all between us and Citizens United here. I mean, this is the ruling, of course, that was based on the Hillary Clinton campaign video that led to a decision that corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money in elections. And it seems to be going nowhere. I mean, I really don't know where we go from here with super PACs, with Citizens United. I don't know how we get beyond challenging money in politics at this point.
Well, it's a huge dilemma. And, there's been, I know the main affiliate just recently passed a resolution of the ACLU to tell our national board that we needed to figure out a way to move forward because, we can all sit around and complain about Citizens United and the way it's affected our politics, but how do we improve our system so it gets better and ultimately actually works instead of just devolving into this system that doesn't even resemble democracy? And, from the ACO's perspective, there's a couple of things that really are doable. A good disclosure act that isn't mucked up with a bunch of stuff that seems to always make it so that we can't support it. We haven't supported the Disclosure Act yet. We want to, but the trouble is that they put in things in there that deal with electioneering speech. If you just want to talk about disclosing the donors to or the people that spend money in a way that influences elections, the C4s, a genuine C4 should have private donors. Mm-hmm. It's the problem of having, groups that are claiming C4 status, acting like they have C4 status, and yet getting involved in politics, then keeping all the secret money. Mm. The super PACs have to reveal their money. And so it's just that there's so much money there, but it is ultimately revealed. It might not be in a timely way near the election. But corporate reform, where corporate giving, there are corporations that don't want to give money to election issues because they're worried, like with Target.
Yeah,
when
well,
Target
they should be worried. They should be worried, and if they are worried, then they shouldn't do it.
And in states where there are laws that require shareholder disclosure,
right,
those corporations aren't doing it because they know that it can be politically...
They'll get caught, and it'll hurt their business.
They know the public's going to find out that they've given money to this candidate who's got views that a lot of people don't like.
I'm actually amazed. I mean, this isn't really an election issue, but I'm amazed that Hy-Vee hasn't gotten more flack for their support of radical right-wing radio. They're behind Rush Limbaugh, Jan Michelson. They were big supporters of Steve Dace. I'm surprised they haven't got more flack.
It's because they're giving gas discounts on if you shop enough with them, you get discounts on your gas. And there are certain things that are excusable as long as you're getting a discount on your gas.
Yeah, but Dawes has discounts on gas too. They could go over to Dawes.
True, but they're not as good a discount.
Those type of things just haven't ever really gotten a lot of traction in America.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, again, back to elections too. Yeah, when corporations are found out to be supporting certain candidates or certain positions, certain issues, they can get pushback from their customer base. So, I mean, and again, right now we have a system that has more, a greater lack of transparency than ever before. And I really don't know how we get beyond that. I really don't know.
It's
no one else
silence.
Does either. I have somebody who knows. Frank from Des Moines, welcome to the show. You got all the answers for us, Frank? Come on.
Ed, where's my music?
Wow. Maddie, where's Frank's music?
Come
on.
No.
Oh, that's okay.
Heather didn't get her music.
I didn't get mine
your music either. So quit whining.
No.
Oh, there you go. It's our right-wing superstar, Frank
I missed you. I haven't talked to you in a while.
Thank you very much. Hey, obviously I can't see, but raise your hand in the studio if you voted for Mitt Romney this last election campaign season.
I'm checking with Maddie. No, she didn't vote for him
I'm
either.
not a member of a corporation, so.
Raise your hand if you voted for Barack Obama. How many hands are up?
Ben is remaining neutral because he works.
Ben can't say. That is a private thing between you and the voting booth.
You guys at the risk of, I don't want to call anybody a name, but you guys are being a little hypocritical there. If you all voted for Barack Obama,
I don't want to call anybody a name.
Hypocrites. However,
hypocrites.
That's not even subtle, Frank. That isn't even subtle. You can do better than that.
A name would be a hypocrite.
Okay.
A action would be hypocritical.
This reminds me of Bill Bernal on the floor of the Iowa House once saying, I don't want to say that Representative Millage is being disingenuous. I don't want to say that he's lying to the members of this chamber. I don't want to say that he's doing this and that. I wouldn't say that about him.
Well, your guy took more money, more corporate money than anybody this last campaign season. So,
He took a lot of
it doesn't make
Wall
it
Street
right.
money too.
But it doesn't make it right. I'm not saying, I think it's right if Barack Obama does it as opposed to Mitt Romney. It doesn't make it right. It still makes the money owns politics. Money owns politicians.
Mr. Ethical, transparent administration has got his something caught in the slicer. And
finger, nose. Should we just
let's move on from the body parts and just appreciate the metaphor for what it's worth.
He, he's going to be Mr. Transparency. He's going to change. He's going to change the way politics are run, but yet politics are still basically run the way they've always been run.
Okay, we agree.
Does that really surprise anyone?
And name this utopia. Name me some year. Name me the utopia that there was never money in politics.
Well, the problem is, Frank, it's worse than ever before. I mean, would you disagree that it's worse now than ever before?
Yeah, but Ed, how are you going to turn it back to the Little House on the Prairie times?
I'd be happy just to go back to pre-2010.
I would imagine when, back in the Little House on the Prairie times when they was running for something, they was feeding somebody homemade apple pie or homemade lemon meringue pie.
How come we can't get you to conjugate verbs correctly, Frank? What's wrong?
Well, if I could jump in, the issue in the late part of the 19th century, there was tremendous corruption. I mean, Congress was owned by Standard Oil and John Paul Getty.
Robber barons.
Robber barons. And that's what the whole progressive movement in the early part of the 20th century was. And in fact, Montana passed a law that forbid corporations from giving money to campaigns in Montana in like 1912. And that was in direct response to basically the mining companies in Montana owned the legislature. And Montana actually, a judge up there actually let the law stand, and it took the Supreme Court of the United States to say, hey, we said you can't have this. Because they tried to say that Montana was different, that they actually had a law that was premised on the idea that corporations giving money to campaigns actually was corrupting, and that was a finding in the legislative record, but it didn't matter. But I'm just saying that there was a lot of corruption in the Little House on the Prairie times too.
Yes, I mean there's always been corruption, and I don't see how you're going to you're going to sift it out. As I've said on this show a number of times, you deal with reality as you find it, or you try to deal with reality as you want it to be.
Or you let Frank from Des Moines into the conversation, and then you change reality.
But yes, but
an alternative universe.
But the bottom line is you got to deal with reality as you find it. So you're not going to, you just accept the fact you're not going to get money out of politics. So you figure out
we don't get it out. We just find a way to manage it better. I mean, there's no
and make it more visible.
Make it more visible. Accountability. Accountability.
Well, look, all I want to know is, all I care to know is who gave money to the guy I'm voting for, and that's all I care.
Well, I mean, I'm glad to know that because we're not there yet, Frank. We need to get there, so you should help us out.
100% disclosure who bought and paid for our president. That's all I care about.
Oh, you should care about more. I want to know about who bought and paid for all of our politicians, and here's why. Like a Senator Mitch McConnell is not beatable. He is not beatable because he has so much money. There's no one that can win against him.
Maybe Miss America.
Maybe Miss America.
She's
Heather
French
Henry
is true.
Contemplating it. Did she decide?
No, I'm not sure that. I assume she was running.
She is contemplating a run. But someone like a Miss America or a former Miss America from Kentucky is the only person that can run against him and have even an inkling of a chance.
I don't think if you stand up and besmirch the voters by calling them toothless, I don't think that's a good start.
I'm not running in Kentucky. I can call them toothless if I want. I'm not running. And I don't have to disclose any money at this point because I'm not takeing any money.
Toothless, isn't that a kind of an ageist remark?
I think so. He's being ageist.
Or baby's pre-teething age.
I think he's referring to a previous comment I made on another show.
When Heather first hit the talk.
All right. Hey, Frank, as almost always, I appreciate your call. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, all right?
That's a backhanded compliment.
Well, it's the closest you're going to get.
Have a good one, Frank.
All right,
thanks, Frank. Yeah, I mean, I really don't. You know, when I ran, again, I served 14 years in the House, and I never took a penny from a PAC or a lobbyist, and I capped everything at $100. Pam Yoakum also, during that same period of time, and we got elected the same year, never took a penny from a PAC. Interestingly, two other people who ran without PAC money back in 1992, this is going to surprise you. Matt McCoy, who does really well with PAC money now, and I'm not saying that disparagingly. He's playing the game as the rules are made. I have nothing against Matt. And Christopher Rance. Now he learned really hard. I mean, really well how to play that game with money. But I mean, there was a movement back in that epoch where people realized money was a problem. And they were starting to find ways of trying to say, hey, I'm going to be a candidate you can rely on because I'm not going to be taking money from these sources. So, I mean, I don't know how to get back to that. I mean, maybe you could still run a campaign without PAC money, with full disclosure, with individual caps. I don't know how you pull that off. All right, let's go to one more call on line 2. This is David Fletcher. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Heather, you guys have been talking about how money influences politics, and I'm sort of a libertarian, and I've read Ron Paul's book, The Revolution, and I'm looking at his son, Rand Paul, and I'm wanting to ask Heather, because I know she called Ed Whitfield Exxon Eddie at Fancy Farm, and
Wow, that's great research you've done there. I'm impressed.
That's a true statement. I was
yes.
There. Well, what I'm wanting to know is because I really like Rand Paul, but who do you think controls him economically? And I'll hang up and listen to your response there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the call, David. Heather?
All right, bye-bye.
Who do I think owns Rand Paul economically? That's actually a tough question because he's such a nutbag that there's it's hard to answer that. You know, he's so outrageous that he can get a lot of free media because he says such crazy things. He's kind of an institution in and of himself. He doesn't have to be beholden to these big corporations like your Senator McConnell's and your Exxon Eddies because he gets so much free press. You know, if you're crazy like a Steve King and you're saying crazy things like dogfighting is a good way of life, then you're getting all kinds of press anyway. So Rand Paul, God, you know, I wish I could give you a direct answer. He's owned by so-and-so, but I can't because he has his own unique strategy of being a kook. So, you know, I don't particularly, on him, I don't have a straight direct answer.
And sometimes, you know, I mean, sometimes I find myself in agreement with some things he says, but he is an interesting phenomenon. We're going to see where he's going to go. I know where we have to go because we are out of time.
Yeah,
Heather,
I'm
you got
sad
the last
too.
word.
I'm sad that we're out of time because Rand Paul, I can't wait to talk more about him.
I'm sure Rand Paul will give you more opportunities. He's going to be in Iowa a lot.
And, yeah, he's running for president, I'm sure, and this is the place to be.
Folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank the $1 Million Marathon coming up in June. I want to thank the Matthew Shepard's Awards Banquet on June 7th. And, of course, Tally's and Hawk Restaurant, two great places for a Sunday brunch this Memorial Day weekend.
Start a fight.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money-back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.